trying to answer those, and I'm going to kind of trying to monitor it myself. And so we'll try and do our best as they come up to answer them. But the session's also being recorded. So if you miss anything, you'll be able to go back and view the session on the BSD website. That should be up in about 48 hours.
All right. Well, some of you may have already gone to the Finding the Right Fit presentation tonight. If you didn't, be sure to listen to that video. Claire Nold Glasser is one of our local independent counselors. She's amazing. I'm a big fan of hers. So one of the things she talks about is this whole idea of picking a college is kind of like picking a friend or maybe a romantic interest. Basically, you don't pick friends or a love interest just by, researching on the web, usually. Instead, you really dig in and get to know that person, right? Same thing like the college search. We don't want students just to be, stalking them on the web. We want them to dig deep and get to know about that college, find out what you have in common, find out what common interests you have, like really do the research. And that sometimes means overlooking small things, overlooking things that are not perfect. Maybe the college is in a state that maybe you're not as interested in, or maybe the weather's not as great, or maybe the campus isn't as pretty as you thought it should be, or the dorms look like a hospital, or whatever it is, overlooking those things. Also, having the same goals. You tend to not want to be friends with people that you don't have common goals or common interests. Same thing in the college admission process. Really making sure that there's a major there or a program that the student's really interested in. Mr. Markham sometimes talks about, the school he went to, which, will not be named, but is actually in this slide. It ended up not having the major that he actually was interested in, but he didn't know that because he didn't do the research, right? So those types of things, like really digging in and finding out what you are passionate about. And then most importantly, not just focusing on like the reputation of the school or what the crowd is doing or status or like ranking, which really is just a thing that happened in the last 20 years, which is actually not good for students. Students really don't need to follow the crowd. They don't need to worry about the bumper sticker schools. They really need to focus on what's right for them and finding that right fit. So that's kind of our message. And that is the UW in that picture, just to give Mr. Markham a hard time. So your best fit students, it really should have a learning environment that supports how you learn. And I think in particular, the pandemic has really helped students in some ways really figure out how they learn because they've had to kind of reinvent how they learn. So helping students to really think through that and think about what type of college environment is going to be good for them. The level of rigor is important. Will it be a good fit for you there? Will it be too easy, too difficult? Consider the cost, very, very important. Campus, what the campus is like. Where might you live on campus? Is it even an option? I already talked about programs and majors. Another thing that families don't research enough is retention and graduation rates. This is really important. It's similar to like looking to buy a car. When you buy a car, you do look at, do these cars last, right? What's it going to cost to take care and maintain this car? Same thing with colleges. Do students actually stick to it? Do freshmen return for their sophomore year? Do students graduate in a reasonable amount of time? And then most importantly, which we'll talk a lot about with Interlake students, is to keep your college list reasonable. And we'll go into this in a couple slides, but we really, the national average is that students apply to 4 to 6 colleges. Here at Interlake, oftentimes it's double or triple that, which is really not healthy and really makes for unhappy students because that means they're not really doing the research. So we really want the college admission process not to be a contest, but instead a really thoughtful, deep process where students are matched to schools that will be a good fit. How do you do that? Sometimes getting to go on campus is the way you do that. I believe it's really, really important that students actually visit the campuses that they're applying to. In this pandemic, that's almost impossible, right? It's very, very difficult to do that. But the good news is that virtual campus tours are basically the norm now. Every college in the United States has had to really produce a beautiful virtual tour. There's nearly 3,000 schools in the United States, 4-year schools. So there are a lot of campus tours that kids can get on the internet and watch. I really encourage you to do that with your student. Take advantage of those, take advantage of actual tours when they become possible. Take advantage of participating in overnight programs, college preview days. If your student's admitted to schools when they have the admitted student weekend, that's essential. It's really hard to commit to a school if you haven't actually, put your head on a pillow on that campus. So take advantage of all those different opportunities. All right, Mr. Markham, I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, so creating your college list, right? So Ms. Williams talked about that 4 to 6 range. That's the average nationally, and most of our students do apply to more than that. But when we talk to them about creating their college list, we really break it down to 3 tiers. You have reach schools that are below 25% acceptance rate, moderate, target, or fit schools that are between 25 to 75% acceptance rate, and then safety schools, which are above 75%. So more than anything, we just want them to do the research. Ms. Williams kind of was giving me a needle there about the way I did research in high school. I thought going to the University of Washington that they had every program imaginable. When I got to campus, I found out they didn't have an education degree for undergraduates. So I had to take a little bit different route, and ultimately it wound up with the job that I wanted. But we don't want disappointment, right? And there's just so much information out there for students that there's no reason to make a choice like that that's not a perfect fit for them. So taking into account the GPA of the student, right? How does that compare to other freshmen that get admitted? Course rigor, cost, all of these things that are really personal to each student. Does the school offer merit aid or 100% MET of financial aid? So those are the things that, that each school is going to be a little bit different, and doing the research really helps. And how do we do that? We use Naviance. And Naviance, you can go in and use filters such as geographic location, size, major, right? And feel. So those are all things that we can help the students try and find when they're creating this list of colleges that they're going to ultimately apply to. And then again, attending college fairs will present a lot of information about that specific school, right? And then we have college representatives, the people that are actually the human beings on the other side of this process, like Mr. Siegert and his office full of people. They come to Interlake to meet with our students. They are the people that actually read the college admissions application. So those are people that are really important to talk to when they come. And this year, obviously, they weren't able to make in-person visits, but they were providing that virtually. And so as we move forward, whatever opportunity you have to connect with these people, we strongly encourage students to do it. College admission testing is a really hot topic. You heard Mr. Siegert in the keynote talk about the stance of the University of Washington. They've removed the requirement. It's there in that second bullet, right? Requirement of standardized test scores is no more, and that is going to be permanent moving forward. Now, each school is going to take a little different stance on this, so it's up to the student to do the research on what the requirement actually is. But for the most part, schools are being very flexible with this. They understand that many states aren't allowing or offering the ACT or SAT in person, and they don't expect students to go, a million miles to other states to take them, right? So we will work with your student on what the requirements are for their particular colleges of interest and make sure that they have the exam if needed. If they are going to take the exam, how do they practice? How do they prep? We often, in years past, have offered the practice SAT for 11th graders and the practice ACT for 10th graders on Super Wednesday. That's in the middle of October. That wasn't possible this year. We were able to offer the practice SAT in January for students that wanted to take it. Hopefully next year, we will be able to offer it again to all students. But in the meantime, there are 3 different programs that are offered that you can take advantage of. One is Khan Academy through the College Board. Students can create an account, right? And they can access all of the things through Khan Academy free to do some test prep. Naviance test prep is another one. They just log in through their Naviance account. There's a slide later that talks about where that is housed, but that's again a free test prep for your students. And then they can also sign up for the SAT question of the day through College Board. And those are 3 different ways that you can do it for free, continue to prep for these exams. We have a college and career center at Interlake. Mr. Valdez, whose picture is on the next slide, is in charge of that, and he is there for support, additional support and he works with our school counseling team on all of the bullets that are listed there, right? So he assists students with Naviance. He can help them sign up for WANET courses, helps students look for scholarships and financial aid. There's his picture. He started with us last year. He's really great, really positive, gets back to students very quickly and loves working with them. So for any of you that are just starting the process, of the career and college search, if you can't get a hold of your school counselor, this is one more person in the building that is willing to help.
All right, so we've mentioned Naviance a few times. Just as a reminder, Naviance is the college and career readiness platform that the Bellevue School District uses. We use it for a lot of different things, but most importantly in this context, there's a whole piece of the college application process that we use it for, and then also the high school and beyond plan, which are some pieces of different things that students need to complete before they finish high school. Things like a resume, things like interest inventory, a personality assessment, a financial aid survey. So these are things students will be doing throughout high school. Students log in using Clever. They basically use their school district credentials, so there's no special login. Sorry. So next slide, Mr. Markham. So if you have not sat down with your son or daughter at their computer and asked them to log you into Naviance, I would strongly encourage you to do that, particularly if your student's a junior this year. Very important. They will be using Naviance a lot. We kind of say Naviance is your best friend because there's so many resources in there that you'll need to use. Just a reminder, there are links to test prep resources inside of Naviance. There's also an actual test prep program in there that's free that students can use. It's actually quite good. My own daughter used it. I've seen it. It's quite good. Another place that's important in there is the community service hours. Students can keep track of their hours there in a program called X2 Ball. It's great because they do need hours for graduation, 40 hours. Right now is still a requirement for anyone in the 9th, 10th, or 11th grade. Our seniors actually have been waived of that requirement due to the pandemic. But community service is a great thing to list in extracurriculars for colleges. So Naviance helps students keep track of that. There's a whole bunch of other things in here that we'll talk about briefly tonight. There's a Supermatch search, Scattergrams, which Mr. Markham will show you. The college application process, students are going to list the colleges they're applying to inside of Naviance. That's how we send transcripts to colleges. This is how we send teacher letters of recommendation, counselor's letter of recommendation, which we'll talk more about. And then there's also an area where students can search for scholarships and how they pay for college. Supermatch, Mr. Markham, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. So in starting the college search process, we tend to highlight Supermatch as the first place that students should go. You can go up to the colleges tab and then choose a fit criteria based on the personality and what you're looking for the particular student, right? These are listed up here: location, academics, admission, diversity, etc. And they have all kinds of different filters that you can choose. You can see there the quick selection of US regions and others. So you can do it by geographic area. And that's just one example, but they break it down into 2 different sections. You have must have, so the absolute musts for any school on their list, and then also nice to have. So students can actually go through and further filter their search based on the things that they absolutely want that are deal breakers or things that are nice to have. And then once they do that, the program churns out this information for them. So you see the list of colleges there on the left. Cornish College of the Arts is the first one. And then you see the fit score. Now, this percentage doesn't mean 100% chance that the student will be admitted. It means that of the criteria that they put into Naviance, remember those things that we listed on the last slide, 100% of those things are met through this school. And then the next column, you see the academic categories, right? So you have your GPA, what the average is, and what your student has. The test scores there. You have some highlights of the school, the costs, so tuition and fees, etc. So it gives a really nice comparison of different schools and how that pertains to the different filters that the students put in. So you're able to really tailor this search, to each individual student. Scattergrams is another really cool tool that is housed in Naviance that we tend to push students to in order to create some sort of baseline of what the chance is that they're going to get in. So this particular school is Western Washington University. You can see the data from Bellevue School District students who have applied, right? In 2018, it was 119 applications. In 2017, it was 104. In 2016, 138. And these green check marks are students that have actually been admitted, right? So the accepted to that particular school. The dotted line is the average of GPA and test score. So you can see that most of the students that applied were well above those average marks, and that's why they have a lot of green checks there. And you can compare another school. This is Stanford University. Stanford is one of the most highly selective schools in the nation. Their admittance rate is under 10%. So that means that on average, 90% of the students that apply do not get in. And that is reflective of what you see here. And that is a lot of red X's, which means that the student was denied. And you can see that their dotted line is astronomically high on both ends. And we had students, plenty of students, that were above both of those lines that still were denied admission. So this isn't supposed to be doom and gloom, right? It's just supposed to provide a little bit of context for your student. They can compare their numbers with other students in the BSD and kind of figure out over the course of the last few years how many of those students actually got into that particular institution. This is another underrated piece of Naviance. It's a place where we house the potential scholarships and money. We have a whole list of potential scholarships over here on the left. You can click on the link and it'll provide information about that particular scholarship. Most of them will also provide the actual scholarship application. So the student can just click on that, see what the requirements are, and actually apply. And students ask us all the time where to go for scholarships and lists. And we direct them here first because there's all kinds of money available for students that want to put in the time to apply for different scholarships. And we encourage everybody to do it because this is money that doesn't have to be paid back. It's basically free money for students that want to go through the process. All right, different components of the college application. If this is your first student that's going through this list could be pretty daunting, right? But rest assured, the counselors are here. We're going to walk you through all of this and make sure that we work with each individual student to take care of all of these different items on the screen. The first one is essays. Most colleges require an essay or multiple essays in their holistic review that is included in the application, right? So students can access those essays before they actually apply. Usually they're going to come out sometime over the summer and they can check that out, but it's something that they should definitely take seriously. As Mr. Siegert talked about, this is something that the colleges weigh heavily on. And so we encourage them to take a few drafts, have people look at them, etc. But it's something that they definitely need to take seriously as part of their application. Colleges are looking at the strength of curriculum. They want to see rigorous courses and how students do in those courses, right? Grades in college prep, grades in all courses. So the difference between those two things are College prep courses tend to be your core courses, right? So English, math, social studies, science, and possibly world language. And some schools are just looking at grades in those particular courses through 4 years. Many are going to consider all courses, right? So that's your elective courses, your music courses, PE, etc. That could be grades in all courses, and our GPA is calculated based on all courses, right? So that is a factor as well. We talked about the admission test scores, SAT and ACT, and how that is going to be used as we move forward. Teacher recommendations and counselor recommendations. If your student is applying to a school that's on the Common Application, they will need probably 2, but at least 1 teacher recommendation and a counselor recommendation. And we encourage them to ask the teachers before the end of the year. It doesn't have to happen now, right? But maybe in June to ask the teachers, and then follow up in the fall to ask to write a positive letter of recommendation for them to support their application. And then the college or the counselor recommendation, each one of the counselors are writing tons and tons of letters each year, so we ask for a little bit of leeway. We'll take your student through that process if needed. They do not have to seek us out. We can help them through each one of the steps that are required for that. Students demonstrated interest. Colleges want to know that they aren't just part of your list, right? That you actually have some interest in attending their school if they offer you admission. So that's included as well. AP and IB test scores, and then an interview. So if it's offered, and very few schools do it, but they might have a representative, right, from the admissions office, or most likely an alumni from their school that lives in our area that comes out and will offer an interview one-on-one with your student. If that is available, we strongly encourage it, because just one more way for your student to highlight all of their great qualities. Ms. Williams, do you have anything else to add about any of these things?
Yeah, I would just say that all these components are important. But really know, as you're starting your search and students are making that list, remember not every school requires every one of these things, and not every school considers every one of these things. So don't look at this list and think, oh my gosh, I have to, address every one of these things, because that's not the case. But it is important to be aware of all of these things and make sure that the student, as they're building their list, that they know kind of the details of what they need. And again, we're here to support that. The teacher recommendation, the counselor recommendation, that at Interlake, we will get started on that in May, June of your junior year. We'll walk your students through that and how they request them, the process for both of those things. It is through Naviance. We'll take care of that with your students. So they don't need to request any teacher recommendations quite yet. You can hold off on that. But typically junior year teachers are usually the best choice. Again, with the pandemic, I know that's a little more challenging, but colleges do like teachers who know students in the most current sense, not teachers that knew them when they were in middle school or something like that.
Great. So talking about your high school transcript, this is something that's actually available to you now through your student view, right? And it's in the documents section. This is something that hasn't been available previous to this year, but it's really cool that students can go in there and check to make sure that their classes and grades are correct. If they need an unofficial transcript to support an application for a summer program or for any scholarships, they can access it through here. All classes taken or attempted must show on the transcript. That's a state law. Some of the classes can be pulled up from middle school. We've actually changed our procedure on that if you're a student that's in 9th grade, those classes were automatically pulled up to your high school transcript. For those of you in 10th and 11th grade, that might not have happened. If you have classes that you took that are high school level and you'd like to add them to your high school transcript, we can walk you through that process with our registrar. It's relatively easy. So again, we can help with that. Language credit can be earned through competency-based testing, and transcripts are going to be sent through Naviance, and they're requested through Naviance when we send them to colleges and universities. We do not calculate nor report a weighted GPA. BSD GPAs are unweighted. We do not create any sort of number that's a weighted GPA. Some of the colleges will do that on their own to create their own weighted GPA, but that's not something that we report. All right, talking about the P grade and how it's going to affect college admission. Mr. Siegert highlighted this in his keynote, that it says there, in general, you must attain at minimum a passing grade, which means a D, to satisfy a CATR, which is the college academic distribution requirement courses. But a grade of pass and a pass not pass will also count, right? So the UW understands and is flexible with this, and the admissions response to COVID is written there. This is all kinds of language here. We included it just so you guys could kind of read over it and come back to it if needed, if you wanted to view it later. We have the links for the California schools, University of California school system, those schools that are involved in the coalition application and the Comlin application as well. So the links are there if you want to check that out. The big thing is just to research what your particular school's policy is going to be, because each one is going to be different and we can't make just a blanket statement. So the question of, does your senior class schedule matter? We would argue that it absolutely matters. Now, some schools will not see grades until you're admitted, like the UW is an example of this, right? But all schools will see the rigor of your senior schedule because we include that on your transcript. The actual schedule is included on there. So are you taking math? Are you taking science, right? Are you continuing with some of these really rigorous courses in your senior year? Those are things that are going to be considered by admissions offices moving forward. So just keep thinking about that.
I would add to Mr. Markham that some schools do require a mid-year report your senior year, which we're doing right now. Actually, this week, we're going to be sending out mid-year reports. So those are Common App schools. A lot of private schools in the country do require, they want to check in. They want to know how students are doing. So again, senior year is not the time to just do nothing or fall apart. It's senior year does matter and is important. So a couple little last minute tips, and this is really aimed at parents. If you can, now is the time to visit colleges with your student. Go together, make it a little adventure. There are a lot of schools within driving distance of, in Oregon, Idaho. You can go visit up in Canada. Even if these aren't schools that are necessarily on your list, I think it's really important to visit all types of different kinds of colleges to get the feel. Small colleges, big colleges, private colleges, public colleges, so students can really get that flavor. Encourage them to talk to friends, their teachers, and other family members. Find out where people went to school. They'd be surprised. Oftentimes, most people are going to colleges that your student has not heard of, or maybe local colleges. In the end, very few people are actually going to like the bumper sticker type of schools. Remember, there are literally almost 3,000 colleges and universities in the United States. So encourage your student to have conversations with people. Also, it's really important to talk to your student about how you're going to pay for college. This is not the time to put it off. If you have a 10th or 11th grader, it is really, really important that you start these conversations. What's the budget going to be? How is that going to impact what your college list is going to look like? One of the hardest things for me is working with students and families who have never had that conversation, and then to have students be admitted to certain schools and realize that they cannot go there because they cannot afford that school. So really, really, really important at the beginning of these conversations that you're really mapping out your budget and what the cost is going to be. So last piece of advice for the students, if you're here, really get involved in Naviance. Take advantage of it. Use the resources that are there. If you have not gotten involved in any clubs, sports, or any other activities at Interlake, it's not too late. Even in this pandemic, we have clubs going. Sports are back up and running, sort of, at least the practices are this spring. It's not too late to volunteer or do community service in our community. There are a lot of local organizations that actually need more help during COVID. In particular, a lot of our community agencies that are helping families with food insecurity. Great place to volunteer. Get out there and help in the food banks. If you're a junior right now, it is definitely the time to start thinking about your college essays and start writing them this summer. Again, most of you are not going to write just one. And when the fall comes around and we're back in person, attend those college rep visits. come in and meet the people who actually are going to be reading your essays and making the decision about your college application. They're real people, and they actually really come to Interlake. And I think we're just right at 8:30. There's one question that just came into the chat, so I'll answer it. Basically, the question is, would participating in school clubs be valued above doing community activities? Absolutely not. These things are all really individual to your student and what their passion areas are. College reps are not looking for one particular type of extracurricular or one particular type of activity. If they were doing that, their college, the college would have a very boring freshman class, right? Because they'd have, well, at the UW, they'd have 4,400 freshmen who are involved in the exact same clubs or activities, which doesn't sound like a very good idea. So of course, colleges really want students to be involved in what they want to be involved in. So there's no, gold star or specific thing. It's really individual, and we really encourage students to be involved, find those passion areas, and do what they want to do, and do it well, right? Like, get involved, and maybe it's just getting involved in really one thing, and that's okay if you're really loving that. So you don't have to be doing a million things. All right, we went 1 minute over. Thank you so much for coming tonight. We really are appreciative. Thank you for asking the great questions. All these will be up and probably within 48 hours, so you can come back and listen to the recordings that you missed, or come back and listen to our recording. So thank you and have a good night. And again, encourage your students to check into Naviance. Also check into their teams. Each class has a college, a counseling team. So class of 2022, 2023, if they haven't check that out, there's some great resources there. All right, have a great night, everyone.
If you get a chance, click on that survey and take it for us.
Oh yes, take the survey, please.
Thanks so much.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Have a great night.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Stockdale.
Hi.
Thank you for coming.
Have a good evening. I just wanted to see you though, so.
Oh.
All right.
Nice to hear your voice.
Yes, likewise.
We appreciate you. Good night, everyone.
Bye, Alicia.
Bye-bye. All right, Mr. Markham, it's just you and I. All right.
End the recording.
Yes, I'll record. Oh, let me see if I can stop the recording.